everybody, today I'm going to be talking about a few makeup items that I have changed my mind about. These are all products that I either loved, hated, or felt no strong emotions about, but for whatever reason, my opinion on these items has changed. And in this video, I'm going to be outlining why. Now, it's going to be a good mix. Some of these opinions have definitely changed for the better, others for worse. But if you're interested in seeing what I have to say in this video, then of course, keep on watching. This foundation has definitely been in a lot of different makeup conversations on the internet. This is the Wet n Wild Photo Focus Foundation. Now, mine is in the shade Soft Beige. When this came out, I think that everybody had something to say about it. I think that a lot of people really liked it because the price was really inexpensive for the time, and the coverage was pretty high, which matched what was on trend at the time as well. The finish is definitely more of a matte finish, and it is a photo focus foundation, meaning that it is specifically, or so it says, marketed or meant for photography, for being on camera. So naturally, with social media and all that, I feel like a lot of people really gravitated towards this foundation, as did I. I personally tried it and I really liked it at the time. However, even initially I felt like it looked pretty heavy in person, but I found that on camera it looked fantastic. So I thought, since it's a photo focus foundation, it looks good on camera and that's what I can use it for. However, my opinions on makeup have definitely changed since then. Admittedly, now I want makeup that looks good in person and on camera. I'm willing to hype my makeup up a bit in terms of drama, especially when it comes to the eyes and lips. But for skin, I like makeup that looks touchable, that doesn't look too heavy, and makeup that looks a little bit more realistic. In addition, I've also made the decision to try and stick to wearing very minimal foundation, if at all. So having a high coverage foundation in my collection that looks a little bit heavy even in person, even if I apply it sparingly, is not necessarily something that I like anymore. And I decided to keep it when I did my foundation declutter. I actually might get rid of it soon because, I mean, it's just one of those like okay formulas. It does have a pretty strong scent. It smells like paint to some people. I do not necessarily mind the scent too much. What I do mind is the fact that whenever I put it on my skin, it looks a little bit, well, matte, and it also looks very obvious on the skin. Even if I try to blend it out, even if I try to really work with it, I just don't like it. I feel like if you are somebody who is a full-time beauty influencer and you're interested in having a foundation that looks fantastic under studio lights, where everything looks pretty good, not gonna lie, this is for you. But for me, I'm somebody that wants to have touchable, feelable foundation, and this is not that. The next foundation that I want to talk about, yes, I have two foundations in this video, is the Fenty Beauty Pro Filter Soft Matte Foundation. When I first got this foundation, I was really interested in having the full coverage foundation kind of look. I wanted something that was so very matte. I wanted something that was long wearing. Keep in mind that at the time, and still now, I had and still do have oily skin. So when I thought oily skin, I thought that I needed a foundation that was super matte, super long wearing, and super full coverage. Now, whenever I think of my skin and the foundation that is perfect for my skin type, for me personally, I think that I want a foundation that doesn't necessarily dry out my skin, but at the same time doesn't make my skin an oil slick. This, I found, more recently, really gives my skin a dry looking appearance, at least on me. And I also don't like, this is like a recent revelation, I don't like how it's a little bit difficult to blend, because for me, I want my face to look pretty just blended out. I want it to look very touchable, very, I would say, non full coverage, you know? And for me, this foundation is full coverage, plus it doesn't blend out that easily. You definitely have to work quickly to blend it into the skin, and you will if you like wear this foundation, get that full coverage appearance, and it does look a little bit drying. So for me, I just feel like right now my preferences have changed so much. Plus, whenever I think about the fact that this is a little bit difficult to blend, I instantly don't necessarily want to use this foundation as much as I did. And this, by the way, was a holy grail for me. I went through so many bottles of this and I absolutely loved this foundation. But now, of course, my opinions and my preferences have changed, so I don't necessarily look at this foundation with the same adoration as I did before. I definitely do want to switch things up a bit and talk about something that I felt a little bit indifferent towards initially, but now really, really like. We're talking about the Morphe and James Charles Pressed Pigments palette. Now, this is a huge palette. It has 39 shades in here, and the whole premise of this palette is that it's supposed to be an all-encompassing, all-you-ever-need kind of palette. It is rather large, and it does include a healthy array of colors and neutrals mixed together. When I got this palette, I definitely was trying to work with it a lot. I was trying to experiment with it, and I was comparing this formula to that of other indie brands that I was trying at the time. And I did note that for me, those indie brands performed so much better than this palette. So because I was doing that comparison, I just felt like this palette wasn't like excellent enough or wasn't superior enough to those other brands that I was using enough for me to really, really get into it that much. So I will say that I did a few videos with this palette. I used it a few times and then I sort of put it away. But recently I have been getting into it a little bit more, and I do admit I like it a lot better. I do think that my changed opinion has a lot to do with the fact that I recently started using a traditional eyeshadow primer that I actually really liked. I have been trying the Anastasia Beverly Hills eyeshadow primer and I really, really like it. And I found that it works brilliantly with this palette right here. I mean, I just never thought that this palette could look so good on me. Not that it didn't before, but using an eyeshadow primer, using a traditional eyeshadow primer made this palette look so much more amazing. Before, I was using a foundation as an eyeshadow primer, which is not terrible, and I would still recommend doing that if you don't necessarily want to buy an eyeshadow primer, but using an eyeshadow primer as your eyeshadow base is gonna give you the best results. And for me, using an eyeshadow primer with this palette was a great way for me to really fall in love with this palette and use it more and more. I actually did use it to create this look today, which is up on my Instagram, or will be soon if you're interested in checking it out. So my opinion on this palette has definitely changed. Before, I liked it, but I didn't necessarily use it that much. Now, I really like it, and I find myself using this palette a lot. Speaking of Morphe, let's talk about this monstrosity. I'm kidding. Not really. I am basically speaking about the Morphe 350 palette. I don't know why I still have this palette. I kind of might declutter it. I definitely think I will be decluttering this because this palette is just 35 colors of mostly browns and then a few pops of color and that's it. This was definitely a palette that I think had a lot of influence and had a lot to do with why everybody for such a long time was obsessed with the warm-toned browns craze. Remember that a few years ago, everybody was just obsessed with the warm brown smoky eye, and that was everything. And this palette was launched at precisely the right time to really capitalize off of that. And I cannot believe how many times this palette sold out. It was so difficult to get this palette, and when I did, I felt like I was on top of the world. But now I look at this palette and I'm like, why? It's the same thing over and over again. It's like the same kinds of browns over and over. You know, I definitely think that Jaclyn Hill, at the height of her, like, I would say makeup power, had a lot to do with this palette's success, with her constant refrain of, yes, it's good to have like several different shades of brown because that really helps you blow out a smoky eye, that really helps you with your makeup game. And yes, I feel like that's still a valid point, but come on, like, you do not need a palette with so many shades of brown that look exactly the same. Because, like, some of the shades in here look so similar to each other and they look exactly the same when you put them on your eyelids. So, I'm not interested in this palette because A, I'm not interested in neutrals anymore, and B, it's definitely like subpar in terms of quality. And if you wonder where the lid is, it fell off. Yeah, that's Morphe's excellent quality, or that was the quality of Morphe at the time that this eyeshadow palette was created. But it's like, no, like no. I thought that this palette was simply just beautiful, amazing quality, just amazing all across the board. Now I know that I don't know what I was. I definitely wasn't very, I guess, well versed in good quality makeup at the time. This next item, oof, let's talk about this. This is the Stila Glitter and Glow Liquid Eyeshadows. I have two shades. I have Kitten Karma, which was like everything, and Molten Midnight, which I absolutely loved and kind of still do. This is a really pretty shade. However, you might notice if you watched my channel like ages ago, back in the day, I really, really loved these liquid eyeshadows. I love them so much. These were like absolutely everything to me. I thought that they were amazing. Now I don't like them as much because I realized how quickly that these dry out. For a while I was able to like just work with it, I was able to finesse this, but like this is the Molten Midnight one, right? Nothing except a film of silver glitter. So yeah, I mean, like, these are great, but I definitely will say that if you get these, use them quickly, because right now the only one that is like just relatively usable in any way is Kitten Karma, and only if I use it with a glitter glue. These dry out so quickly that they're very difficult to use. And I will say that if you're interested in trying out this formula, which is a good one, I would suggest investing in those tiny little sample sets that they sell during the holidays, because the holidays are coming up soon and you will see Sephora and, well, Stila carrying these little Stila liquid metals glitter and glow like sets where they have like smaller sizes of these at a discounted price. And if you're interested in getting these, get those because you'll use those up faster, if at all, than this, because these, like, it does take a while to use one of these up if you're into using other makeup products, of course. But I will say that like this was definitely a waste. These dry out so quickly that I don't really think it's worth it anymore to get these, because like, these are relatively high priced. And whenever I think of how much money I spent on just these two and the fact that I cannot use these anymore, it's kind of not the best feeling. On the bright side, I actually do have something that I changed my mind about in a positive way. I'm talking about the BH Cosmetics Eye Light, and this is in the shade, what is the shade? Chill Pill. Now the thing about this is that when I first got it, I really didn't like it because I felt like if I used it the way I wanted to use it, it would really just lift the eyeshadow underneath. I felt like it wasn't necessarily the most even. I felt like it was super patchy, and I just didn't feel like it was reflective enough to justify me getting this in the first place. And it is under $10. It is pretty inexpensive, and I will say that when you get liquid eyeshadows in this kind of color, it's a little bit more difficult for them to look good than, say, if you were getting something that was a little bit more of a lighter color. And when I first got this, I was really trying to blend it out. I was really trying to manipulate it in that way. And yes, I had that issue when it was getting patchy, and I felt like the more I manipulated it, the more the eyeshadow would just lift underneath, and the more the eyeshadow would look patchy, and it would just be a big mess. So I stopped using it for a little bit, and I gradually started to get back into it, and I realized that the best way to use this, and this changed my mind completely about this product, would be to simply take the applicator or just put it on your finger and really press it into the eyelid. Don't necessarily try to swipe it or anything and blend it out with a brush. Or if you do want to do that, do so quite minimally, because the more you try to blend it in, the more you try to really just like work it into the skin, the more patchy it looks. However, if you just lay the color down and maybe try to manipulate or blend out the edges, then it will look so much better and it will really look quite beautiful. I also will say that I found that this is a really great product to use underneath glitters, because sometimes when you use a glitter glue and you apply like glitter, it just looks a little bit out of place in some looks. But if I put this on first and then I put the glitter on top, this has a certain reflective nature to it that it provides a really good, I would say, foundation for glitter to go on top. So I really like this a lot right now. I still think that it's not the most amazing product ever, but considering that when I got this, I actually kind of hated it, my opinions have definitely improved. Next, I want to talk about the Wet n Wild Mega Glow Halo Highlight, and this is in the shade Gilded Glow. Now, I definitely say that at one point I considered this a holy grail product. My opinions have changed because I have found that the really unfortunate thing about this is that it only looks good when I have a pretty hefty tan. And also, the other thing that I found is that in certain cases, especially if I'm not wearing foundation with this, and by the way, I don't wear foundation a lot, I have found that sometimes it has like a really dark flip to it. You put this on, right, and it has like this most beautiful, like just really, I'd say, gorgeous, like reflective nature to it. Where is it? Yeah, you can see it on the back of my hand. But see, the unfortunate thing is that it has a certain flip. See it right there? When the light is not hitting it, it looks like a dark spot on your face. And you can try to blend it out. And yes, that will improve the look of it, but at the same time, I'm not sure if you can see it now, but it does give you like this dark sort of cast on your skin. And when you're putting this type of product on the high points of your face, it can look like you just basically, like I would say, push the bronzer a little bit too high. So unfortunately, it's gotten to the point where the more I've used this, the more I've sort of like not liked it as much as I used to. I'm still trying to work with it. I'm still trying to experiment with it because I still have this one to use up. I will say that it looks better when applied on top of foundations because it blends out better. Also, the other thing is that I feel like I definitely can wear this and have it look a lot better when I have a little bit of a tan. If my skin tone is a little bit lighter, then I will definitely get that cast and it will look even more obvious. However, if I have a little bit more of a tan, it's definitely more flattering. I will say that I like this product. I just feel like the shade, this specific shade, Gilded Glow, is not for me. At some point, I'll probably go into the drugstore and specifically try and find a lighter version of this shade. However, it's just right now this specific shade is a shade that I used to really love, but now I don't. And I wish I could love it as much as I used to, but I definitely have seen on several occasions that on camera this just doesn't look good because of that cast, and it just makes me look bad at makeup. I definitely will say that a great way to see whether or not products perform well is to basically see them on camera, and since I was wearing this a lot when filming videos, I really got a good first-hand look at just how bad it could look, especially with that cast issues. So for me, that was enough to turn me off of this product a great deal. I think that if I get a shade lighter than this, it would work a lot better for me. But for now, I definitely think that I do not like this as much as I used to. That is the end of my products I've changed my mind about video. And I will say that yes, I've done reviews on a lot of these makeup items. Some of them have been rave reviews, some of them not so much, but I will say that yes, opinions do change, especially when it comes to makeup product, and my style and my techniques and my way of doing things has changed dramatically over just the past few years, and naturally my opinions that I've attached to certain makeup products have changed with it. With that though, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it interesting. Thank you so much for watching it till the end, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye guys.